broadcast journalism at Fanshawe College and the 6X FM newsroom.
Good evening. Here are some of the stories we are following. Dalton McGuinty was back in town today. The Liberal leader was on CBC Radio discussing his 2020 plan. If elected, he promises to put more money back into health and education. About 200 members from the Ontario region of the Canadian Union of Public Employees marched alongside local NDP candidates at UWO today to attack the Harris government's record on education. And be sure and tune in to Rogers TV tonight for the beginning of local election debates. Tonight you can see all candidates from the riding of London North Centre go head-to-head at 7 o'clock, followed by London West representatives at 9. And taking a look at the forecast, a few clouds tonight as we drop down to a low of 10. Tomorrow, expect more sunny skies with a high near 27. From the 6X Newsroom, I'm Andrew and I have a great evening.
Watch and talk to local politicians during Rogers Community TV's exclusive live riding-by-riding coverage of all candidates' debates. London West, Friday, May 28th at 9 p.m. Decision Ontario, only on Rogers. After you've made an informed choice and voted, get results you can count on. For live, local, in-depth election night coverage in your riding, tune in Thursday, June 3rd, beginning at 8 p.m. to Decision Ontario on Rogers Community TV. We'll bring you comprehensive, up-to-the-minute, on-screen results, analysis of campaign issues, panel discussions, and on-location reports. For local, live, and interactive election night coverage, watch Decision Ontario, only on Rogers Community TV.
Rogers Community TV welcomes you to Decision Ontario. Tonight, live from our studio, we bring you our all-candidates debate for the riding of London North Centre in a format that gives you the opportunity to phone in and speak one-on-one with the candidates. And now, the host and moderator for this evening's debate, from CFPL Radio 98, Gord Harris.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. This is the first of 4 special all-candidates meetings we're having here at Rogers Community TV. And tonight, as you just heard, we're featuring in this hour the riding of London North Centre. It'll be followed at 9 tonight by the riding of London West. And then on Monday night at 7 p.m., we'll do the candidates from the riding of London Fanshawe. And that'll be followed on Monday night at 9 by the candidates from the riding of Elgin, Middlesex, London. I'm going to explain how it's going to work here just briefly to let you understand the format for this evening. What we're going to do to begin is let each of the candidates have a 2-minute opening address. Earlier this evening, they drew lots for that to determine the order of first speaking. And after that, we're going to open the phones to your questions for these candidates. The number to call will be scrolled across the screen as we go through the program. So without further ado, let's start with the candidates debate tonight, and we will begin with the first person who drew tonight, the number 1 in the draw, and that is the man from the Family Coalition Party, Andrew Jezierski. Andrew, go right ahead.
The most important provincial issues, education, healthcare, and the economy, are family issues. They affect your lifestyle and shape the type of society that we leave to our children. However, we cannot reform any of those issues, improve on those issues, unless we put our basic values back to our society. The values we hold are the most important inheritance we can give to our children. The main reason to vote the FCP is the same reason you would vote for any other party. We have the best principles and policies, and we have candidates you know you can trust. The FCP is the only party in Ontario that believes in the family as the building block of society. Do you? Then why vote for a government that has a completely different worldview? The FCP would end government funding of abortion. None of the other parties would, even though even most people who are pro-choice oppose funding for elective procedures. Our party favors giving everyone, including people with low income, a tax cut by eliminating the PST. Harris is silent about that. And you know that the Liberals and NDP would never think of it. The FCP is in favor of more parental control of schools, although the Harris government has revised the curriculum they also have centralized power in the hands of the Ministry of Education. And yes, Harris says that he increased healthcare spending. But we say...
I'm sorry, your 2 minutes are up. We have to keep to the time tonight.
Thanks.
Very much. Our second candidate to speak to us tonight is from the Conservative Party, Dianne Cunningham.
Good evening. I believe in the last 4 years that Mike Harris and his team, myself, representing London North, have worked very hard to keep the promises that we made in the last campaign. Ontario is back on track. We have over 540,000 net new jobs. About 400,000 people who were on welfare are no longer there. Some of them have jobs, some of them just are not on welfare, and many of them are training for those jobs that have been created. I can tell you that we're very proud of our track record, but we need more time to get the job done. As you know, healthcare is a very important issue for all of us here in London and right across Ontario. And it's been very important that we do two things: that we restructure the system to meet the needs of a modern, growing society, that where the challenges are right here in London and the great success stories are right here in our own hospitals and at our Robarts Institute as well as our Ivy Institute. I can tell you also that education has been on the minds of people, and we told you that we would bring standards back to our schools, that we would have curriculum that is appropriate for children and the same right across the province, that we would have standardized report cards that parents could understand and read, and that most of all, we would make sure that we put the funding right back in the classroom, and we've done that. The job hasn't been easy. We need your support to complete that job. I know that Mike and I and our caucus right across Ontario have tried our best to keep our provinces. He's been the strong leader that Ontario needs, and I hope that you will give us your vote on June the 3rd once again.
And our next candidate to speak to us tonight is Jeff Culbert with the Green Party. Jeff?
Well, the Green Party came out of the environmental awareness, and it was formed in 1983. And part of what we were saying is that there isn't an ecological basis for our society, and until we get that, we're sliding in the wrong direction. We have to talk fundamentals here, and if you like what you hear, you have to support us in order to get the message across and move in the right direction for the whole political system. Number one is that human health is fundamentally dependent upon environmental health. If you let the environment slide, you let human health slide, and we see it all the time. Today we're hearing 4 hours in the sun, or we'll give you sunburn. We have high UV ratings. There's bad air days when throughout the summer we'll be hearing them where you have to keep the little kids and the old people off the streets and keep them out because the air is bad. We have to go after these problems with policy, and everything has to be based on those things. So I want to say discourage polluters through the tax system and take the taxes off of things that we want, such as payroll, such as bicycles, and all the green industries that are out there but are not being given a break because we are still subsidizing polluters. So the two things I want you to think about throughout this campaign, and listen to the other candidates here and see if you see any sign that they're moving in that direction. If you don't see it, then support the Greens. It's that human health is dependent upon environmental health, and a sound economy requires a sound ecology. Thanks.
And our next candidate is from the Liberal Party of Ontario, running in the riding of London North Centre, Roger Caranci.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for letting me be in your home this evening and giving you the opportunity to see what the Liberal Party is all about. This is probably the most important election that we have ever faced in this province, probably the most important election for our children and for our future. This is an election, ladies and gentlemen, on June 3rd, that we need to make the right decisions. We have, on my left, a party represented by Marion Boyd, the NDP, that believes that they have a monopoly on compassion. On my right, we have a party represented by Ms. Dianne Cunningham. She believes that they have a monopoly on fiscal responsibility. This, ladies and gentlemen, is totally false. These two parties have led this province the past 10 years. The NDP from 1990 to 1995, and the Conservatives from 1995 till present. Through the NDP's reign, they brought the province to their knees fiscally. Financially, we were in the worst shape we have ever been in. We almost declared bankruptcy as a province. Under the Conservatives, they have led you to believe that they have gotten our financial house in order. That is absolutely false. We have accumulated a debt of we have accumulated $24 billion more towards the debt under their reign, which is more than the NDP party did in their time. I'm here this evening with you to bring about our plan, the 2020 plan. This is a plan, ladies and gentlemen, that will lead us into the next century. This is a plan for the future, a plan that was made with the future in mind and with our children in mind. I ask you on June 3rd to make the right choice and put the party that can best lead us into the future, the Liberals, into power. Thank you very much.
And our next speaker now is from the NDP party, again in the riding of London North Centre, Marion Boyd.
Thank you, and thank you very much for allowing us to speak with you tonight about what is probably the most important election in which you have ever voted. People in Ontario know that we are in danger of losing some of the most valuable community services, healthcare services, and educational services that we have built over many years in this province. We're in danger of losing those services because we have a Conservative government that has chosen to put its emphasis on tax cuts rather than to put its emphasis on maintaining and enhancing the services that make us competitive as a province. We have been exposed to many hours of advertising by the Conservative government, trying to convince us that what we have experienced in our hospitals, in home care, in education, in our community services, is not reality. But we know that we have lost a great deal. We have, in fact, incurred a social deficit, a healthcare deficit, an educational deficit, an environmental deficit, under a government that has cut spending in very drastic ways in order to fund cut, which benefits only those at the top end of the wage scale. New Democrats would remove the so-called tax cut from those at the top end, those with individual taxable incomes over $80,000, and reinvest the resulting $1.5 billion back into healthcare, into education, into our communities, into our environment. That is the choice that you can make on June the 3rd, and I ask for your vote.
We have one more candidate to address us before we open it up to the next part of the program, and that is to invite your calls. And we'd invite you to call us now. The number again has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen, 672-1313, 672-1313. And we invite your calls here. Again, I would ask you, if you have called the program, to be patient. We anticipate the lines being very busy tonight, but we do anticipate being able to get your call on. I would also ask you to be brief in your questions, because we're going to let every candidate respond with a 1-minute response to your question. So please try to keep them brief so we can get on as many callers as we can. And now our final speaker in the opening part of this program tonight is from the Freedom Party, Robert Metz.
Thanks, Gord. Unlike all my fellow candidates here tonight, the one thing that really distinguishes Freedom Party from the rest is that we're not here to offer more taxes and more regulations and more rules for you to live by that you have to pay the government to enforce. Unlike all of these parties, Freedom Party believes that the purpose of government in a free society is to protect your freedom of choice and not to restrict it. We think that the government should be a referee in the game, not a player in the game, which is the case when the government starts running everything from our healthcare system to our education system and even running our welfare system. Choice in education means that you as a taxpayer should have the right to direct your personal education taxes to the school of your choice without having to pay again to the government monopoly. Choice in healthcare means you should have the right to opt out of the government insurance scheme and buy private insurance if you can get a better deal, and seek other alternatives in the marketplace, thereby reducing your debt and your burden on the taxpayer and possibly saving yourself some money in the long run. On taxes, we'd like to see lower taxes, flat taxes, and a higher basic personal exemption of at least $20,000. And we believe in lower taxes on the basis of principle, not because lower taxes bring more revenues to the government, which is the reason that the PCs are lowering taxes. So these are just a few of the differences about Freedom Party, between Freedom Party and all the rest. Basically, spending and continuing to spend on government programs that haven't worked and seem to get worse election after election is simply not the answer. We think that what we need more in our system today is choice, and that's the one thing that all the other parties have in common. They don't want to give you is that personal choice. Thanks very much.
Candidates, thank you all. That was very good. Everybody kept it under 2 minutes. Very good. Thank you. Now let's open it up to the phones. We have our first caller of the evening, Mike, on the line. Good evening, Mike. Hello, Mike. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Okay, Mike, go ahead. Your question for the candidates.
My question is actually for Mrs. Dianne Cunningham. And my question is, Dianne, your party has stated that leadership qualities are important for leading this province successfully. Now, my question is, can you tell me about your leadership abilities and how you can actually use these to best represent the constituents of the London North Centre?
What we're going to do, if the question is posed of a candidate, we're going to allow that candidate to respond, and then we will let each of the other candidates respond as well. This was directed to Dianne Cunningham. Dianne, go ahead.
Well, Mike, obviously I've been elected at Queen's Park for some 11 years. In the last 4 years, I've been a minister in the government. It's been very difficult through some very tough times of reducing a deficit that we got of $11 billion, more than that, right down to just 2.2. At the same time, the federal government cut $2.8 billion out of health care. So we've had a lot of debt that was left to us that we had to make up. So I think that we've done a good job of getting rid of overlap and duplication, of getting rid of government waste, of directing more dollars, almost $500 million into the classroom, of finding some $1.5 billion new dollars to put into health care. And it hasn't been easy to do this. I think the leadership of Mike Harris has been strong and steady. We made promises in the last campaign, and we've kept those promises. And we now have a new plan, our document right here for most of you that I've left at your doors.
60 seconds goes very fast.
That's the plan, and we'll follow it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now from the Family Coalition Party, Andrew.
We are the only party, fourth largest party in Ontario, which is not backed by big business, professional organizations, or unions. So we don't owe anybody. And that's why I will represent my local constituency. And I promise you actually one thing is that I will respond to every single inquiry in my office within 7 days. And as a party, we have no chance to form the government right now, but you can vote for me, and you can choose me to work on your behalf.
And now from the Green Party to answer the question of leadership, Jeff Culbert.
Yeah, I interpret the question to be about local leadership, and I think that that's one thing that's sadly lacking right now, in the sense that the best decisions are the ones that are made with a lot of consensus on the ground, and I think there's a lot of, I hate to call people resources, but let's just go with that, resources out there of people who are very intelligent, very compassionate and caring, that we're not consulting on things. The present government's probably the worst example of not consulting very well and putting through things that people don't want. But I think we have to get a cooperative spirit going, and I think anyone who's elected should get non-partisan forums going at the local level who would change things dramatically.
And now for the Liberal Party, Roger Caranci.
Well, I think that was a very good question, and regarding leadership within the party, or I'm sorry, within the local area here, we've had two people who have represented the riding of London North and London Centre that have been part of governments that have been, you can have the status quo if you'd like, or you can have what we had 5 years ago, and vote for those people. But I tell you, there's a lot of people, when I knock on those doors, they don't like what they've had the past 9 to 10 years. And believe me, if you like somebody that has vision for the future and new ideas for the future, that's where I believe I will be. I'm committed to responding to constituents' questions within 72 hours of a question being put forth. I have promised in my brochures that we will hold public meetings on a regular basis. That would be something still to be decided. But these things, folks, I haven't seen. I have never seen in my time in London, and this is something that I would like to see.
Again, on the leadership issue now, from the NDP, Marion Boyd.
Well, thank you for the question, caller, because of course it is the main plank that the Tories are running on. And frankly, if you define leadership as being a willingness to bull your own ideas through no matter what the opposition is, one might consider that to be leadership. I would agree with the position that says we need to be building some consensus around decisions, particularly when we have such a changing society. Roger is wrong. I regularly have town hall meetings at which we discuss policy issues. It is very important for a representative to keep in touch with their constituents and to try their best to represent not only individual constituents but their constituent city or area to the government in Toronto. I think you know that over the last 9 years I have done that in the City of London, and I look forward to doing it in the next 4 to 5 years.
And now for the Freedom Party, Robert Metz.
Thanks, Gord. Leadership is something that's tremendously lacking in today's politics. Most of our politicians today are followers, not leaders. They listen to every interest group, every special lobby group that comes along, and they're just falling over themselves to see who can give them the most money and thereby earn their vote. I think leadership is about a commitment to principle and the ability to state that principle to the public, put it forth to them, and then stick by it, no matter what happens. And that's something I think that we really see lacking in politics entirely, and that's why election after election we're in a worse situation than we were in the election before. Next election, when we come here again in around 2003, let's say, we'll be talking about underfunding in education, underfunding in health care, taxes are too high. It's going to be the same merry-go-round, and I don't see any changes coming from the other parties.
Let's go back to the phones now for more of your questions, and our caller next is Adam. Adam, good evening.
Hi, my question is directed to Ms. Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham, I'm an undergraduate business student at Western. My tuition was doubled last year, so I'm now paying $9,000 a year. I was wondering how your government could justify such a tuition hike.
Well, actually, your tuition should not have been doubled last year, Adam, so that's the first challenge. But it is true that tuition fees were raised at most universities. At the same time, for the amount of money that was taken in by the university was told to set aside 1/3 of that to put back into support in the way of bursaries or grants for students. The University of Western Ontario has $9 million, which it will reinvest in that regard. The support to students right now, twofold. Our support to students is up 1/3 over the last government. And just a couple of weeks ago, we signed on to an agreement with the federal government on an income contingent loan repayment plan, which means that when you get your first job, that you will pay back to the government or to the lender a certain portion of your income relevant to what you can afford to do. And the second part of that is after 5 years, there will be even some reduction of the principal. So it's a very good agreement that we finally have, and other provinces will be doing the same thing.
Robert Metz from the Freedom Party.
Yeah, Adam, you asked for the government to do something for your tuition, and I really have to, with due respect, tell you that that's your responsibility. When you ask these politicians for more money for your tuition, they have to get that money from taxpayers. Now, I think my job as a politician is to also protect the taxpayer and to make sure that he's not paying for things that he cannot afford to pay for because he's going to be saddled with the debt. So it's either you or him. Now, that aside, Freedom Party believes that each individual should be able to direct their education taxes to the school of their choice. Under our system, you'd be able to go to any institution, but the taxes that you would pay over your taxpayer lifetime would be that expense that you incurred to the government, and then when you paid it off, that would be it. Your education taxes would end. Now, this is the plan that Freedom Party puts forth, and I have yet to hear a valid reason why the other parties oppose it.
For the NDP now, Marion Boyd.
Well, Adam, I think I'll tell you why I oppose that kind of view. We believe, as New Democrats, that education ought to be publicly funded and publicly accountable, and we believe that because we believe that education is one of the investments that we make together in our society to make our society a more humane place to live, to encourage growth in the economy, to encourage change in the economy, to build a knowledge economy, which is what we need in this new world of ours. I would say to you, Dianne tells you the university shouldn't have raised your tuition, shouldn't have doubled your tuition. Well, they deregulated tuition. They allowed the universities to do that, and universities strapped for cash because of the cuts that this government have made those choices, and it is putting students like you in jeopardy, and we need to change that.
And for the Liberal Party on this issue, Roger Caranci.
Thanks for the question, Adam. appalled me, frankly, that Ms. Cunningham had mentioned that it shouldn't have been done, but actually, in fact, it was. And, you know, you're a prime example of what happened. The Liberal Party is committed to rolling back college or university fees 10%. And we're also looking at stabilizing the funding in the next 5 years. Now, this is very important for the future of the province economically, because if we don't have students that come out of college and universities that are highly educated, there's absolutely no way that this province will prosper. So it is one thing that we have to do. We're committed to it. We will do it. We will not cut for the sake of cutting. We will make sure the funding is in place where it is needed. And believe me, colleges and universities are a high priority for the future of Ontario and for the future of the Liberal Party.
And now for the Green Party, Jeff Culbert.
Well, it's true. The fees have gone up incredibly, and it does cut people off of the potential to get their education. And education does benefit the society in general in ways that we can't even predict. People go out there with creative minds and figure out ways to make contributions. And I think that the barriers that are being put up are contributing to a waste in human potential in Ontario.
And for Family Coalition, Andrew Jezierski.
As a student of Western, mature student, I believe that actually we should bear part of the cost of our education. But also I do believe that the university administration deregulated the tuitions much too high, much too quickly. I also believe that there is a role for the government to fund the university in a proper way, but we do need to require from the university more accountability. So we cut the waste, we cut the administration.
We're going to take a break here in just a moment. I could ask the next caller, maybe we can get the question on, and then we'll come back and get the candidates to respond to that afterwards so we can save as much time as we can. Shirley, I believe, is next. Shirley, good evening.
Yes, if your party is elected, this is to all the candidates, if your party is elected, will you pass a strong mandatory Ontarians for Disabilities Act in the first year of your mandate?
Okay, the question, thank you, Shirley. The question is about a strong Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Of course, the Conservative government did come out with such an act recently, and it was not approved in the legislature, and we'll refer to that when we come back. Once again, you're watching a special broadcast tonight. We are having the candidates from London North Centre for next Thursday's election here with us to take your calls. 672-1313 is the number, and we will be back with more from these candidates and your questions right after a short break. Stay with us.
After you've made an informed choice and voted, get results you can count on. For live, local, in-depth election night coverage in your riding, tune in Thursday, June 3rd, beginning at 8 p.m. to Decision Ontario on Rogers Community TV. We'll bring you comprehensive, up-to-the-minute, on-screen results, analysis of campaign issues, panel discussions, and on-location reports. For local, live, and interactive election night coverage, watch Decision Ontario, only on Rogers Community TV.
This time, go this way and then that way. How's that? Creative? Well, welcome back. We have the candidates from London North Centre here tonight to take your questions. The number, once again, 672-1313. Caller Shirley just a moment ago posed a question about the Ontarians with Disabilities Act, asking if these candidates would intend to pass a strong one if elected and forming the next government. We're going to give this question for a first response to the Liberal candidate for that riding, Roger Caranci. Roger?
This legislation would mean a lot to a lot of people in the community and in the province of Ontario. I find it rather amazing that a policy has not been established a lot earlier than it was. And this morning, as a matter of fact, the question did come up at another all-candidates meeting, and the Conservative candidate had mentioned that they would like to pass it within the next 2 to 3 years. As a Liberal Party, we would make the commitment of passing that within the first year of our mandate. I'm positive we can do that. I know we can do that, but the most important factor here would be to pass legislation that is fair to the individuals that affects. That was the problem the last time. This is not going to be the problem again.
And now to respond to that question for the NDP, Marion Boyd.
Surely there's no question that the New Democrats would pass a strong Ontarians with Disabilities Act and would base that act on the advice of the experts in the field of disability. The Ontarians with Disability Act Committee has done a great deal of work looking at the act that has been in place in the United States for some time. We would take their advice about both what's good and what's bad in that act and look at what is needed for the particular circumstances that we face in Ontario. I too believe it could be done within the first year of a mandate, but it needs to be done by building consensus between government, community agencies, and the disabled community itself.
For the Freedom Party, Robert Metz.
Thanks, Gord. You know, a Disabilities Act, it depends on what's in it, depending on what we would support. If we're talking about regulations on private property and things that incur expenses to other people, we might not be too supportive of that. If we're talking about getting more funds to those people with disabilities, well, the first thing we would support is to get the people without disabilities out of the safety net. This is one of the greatest problems that government funding is having today, is that everybody's expecting free government services, so that the people who are actually in need and the people who are actually disabled find themselves shortchanged because everybody else is in the safety net and nobody's on the outside trying to hold it up. So certainly what we have to do is get the rest of the people off the social system, and then I think government could do wonders for people with disabilities, things undreamt of.
And now Jeff Culbert for the Green Party.
Yes, I agree with the idea of the strong Disabilities Act. I don't know the details of the act that was on the table, so I'll just pass it on.
Dianne Cunningham for the Conservatives.
Well, we did have the act that was presented in the House, and we heard from the disabled community, and I did right here in London, that there were parts of it that they in fact thought should be stronger. And I think, you know, that Robert has said it, there will be money attached to it. And we obviously will pass that act as soon as we can. I don't think I said 2 or 3 years, but if you're going to consult with people and put a plan in place, then you have to know what you're talking about. It probably will take more than a year. However, let me just say this. In order to have the money to provide, to remove physical barriers, to provide improved housing for disabled people, to provide more program, to work with the private sector to have more jobs for disabled people, because that would be my own personal goal. We have to have a strong economy. I mean, people who are working pay taxes. And we have created an investment environment, and we have more jobs. And those small business people have come to Ontario, they've come home, and they're investing. And we now have the dollars that we can consider some of these things. But without lower taxes, we won't be able to do it again.
Andrew Jezierski now for the Family Coalition Party. Andrew.
We believe in a strong, self-reliant family. But we also believe that there is a place for the government to help the most vulnerable. And certainly I would support the Disability Act in its proper version. Helping but not giving the handouts.
Our next caller is Janet. Good evening, Janet. You're with the candidates. Go right ahead. Janet, good evening. Do we have Janet on the line? Good evening, Janet. Shall we move to the next caller?
Hello.
Oh, Janet. Okay, Janet, go right ahead. You're with the candidates.
I guess this is to Dianne Cunningham. I have a few concerns regarding all the cutbacks in the healthcare system, and two in particular that I came across recently was I've heard that the subsidies or the support to some of the women's shelters have been cut significantly under the PC government, and as well as the people who have children that go to with disabilities for the hearing impaired and that they have to pay a lot of the money themselves. I just wondered if there was any comment, and how can they rationalize paying for drug rehabilitation when things like support to the women's shelter for abuse and that are cut back significantly.
Thank you, Janet.
Janet, I think all three areas that you have talked about, women's shelters, hearing impaired, and drug rehabilitation are very important to people who are needing those kinds of services. I am the minister responsible for women's issues, and we've tried very hard, in fact have a very good framework across 9 ministries to improve and services for women who have been victims of violence, and also to stop the violence. So right here in London, we have stabilized and given stable funding to the women's shelter. We have a new domestic violence court, which is getting the convictions that we've never had in the past. And we also have a treatment center, a rape crisis treatment center, now a domestic violence treatment center at St. Joseph's Hospital. And that gets the kind of services to the woman who needs it very quickly in a very compassionate, reasonable way. It also gets the evidence that we need in order to get convictions in the court for people, in fact, who need those kinds of services and who in the past didn't get that kind of help.
And we'll pass this question on to the other candidates now. Andrew Jezierski first for Family Coalition.
Certainly, again, as a family party, we are very much in favor of proper funds for the healthcare. We do believe that healthcare is for healing, meaning that we will redirect the funds from elective procedures like abortion to the proper healthcare. We are in favor of helping, as I said before, of the people who cannot help themselves. And certainly the abused women are one of these. But we need to go back to basics and rebuild society where there's less and less violence, and especially the violence against the most weak, like children, and most vulnerable members of society. So we have to start at the bottom. All those reforms will not work unless we go back and put our moral values first.
Thank you. And our next candidate for the Green Party, Jeff Culbert. Jeff?
Well, I concur with Andrew on that one, that we have to go back to a moral, compassionate basis to the society, and without that, we're not going to get anywhere with it. Unfortunately for women who need shelter and children who have disabilities and people who need drug rehabilitation programs, they don't contribute so much to the global economy, which is the buzzword of the day at different levels of government. And there really has to be more compassion put in the society and more sense of taking care of each other. And that's one of the strong, I think you should vote for a party that is supporting that view and not just the global economy and competition.
And for the Liberals now, Roger Caranci. Roger?
Well, Gord, this just shows and thank you for the question, Janet, this just shows the present government and their incompatibility with what is going on today in society. One of the easiest things to do is pick on people less fortunate, and the people that need shelters and people that need help in getting their lives back together. These are the ones that, as Jeff mentioned, are not they figure they don't contribute to society. That's wrong. These are people that need help in order for them to begin contributing to society. We, as a party, again, we are committed to helping out the most vulnerable people in society all along the spectrum. We will help out everybody. We are not there to pick on any one segment of society. We are there to come up with plans and solutions that these people will not fall through the cracks as they have. As a matter of fact, they've been pushed through the cracks under the present government that is there right now.
And for the NDP now, Marion Boyd.
Well, thank you for the question, Janet. As you know, I worked in the field of violence against women before I was elected. And the facts speak for themselves in London. One of our shelters, the one on Maitland Street, was closed as a result of funding cuts by this government. The second stage housing shelter that we all built as a community to give additional help to those who were forced to leave their homes because of violence lost all its funding for counseling and for supportive measures for women and children who found themselves in that situation. And it's only because of the heroic work of the people who work in the field of violence against women and the compassion and the generosity of our community that the services are able to be provided at all. I know that you are concerned about all of the issues around healthcare, where user fees are creeping in, where people are more and more having to dip into their own pockets for services that used to be covered, and I share your concern.
And now for the Freedom Party, Robert Metz.
I'm afraid that cutbacks are just an inevitable consequence of running things by government, and there's a very simple reason for that. Every service that our politicians offer in terms of offering to the taxpayer comes out of the same tax base. You've got education being paid for out of taxes, you've got your health care being paid for out of taxes, you've got welfare being paid for out of taxes, you've got our roads and our sewers and our services being paid for out of taxes, you've got politicians who want to spend money on games and hosting events and special events paid for out of taxes. It's all coming from the same place. So that suddenly we find that because of all our compassion, which I think is a lot of greed hidden under the guise of compassion, that our governments have spent us into bankruptcy. And that what we're facing today is cutbacks in all these services. I believe that if we even tripled the spending, current spending, on any government service, we'd still be here next election talking about underfunding. Because it's just not going to work until there's some responsibility put back into the system. We have to have choice. We've got to get those who are able to get out of the safety net. Thanks.
Thank you very much, candidates, for all those responses. And thank you for your callers, for the calls tonight as well from our callers. Unfortunately, we're out of time for callers. The hour goes very quickly, and we have promised our candidates that they would be allowed to do a 2-minute final statement, closing statement, if you will, and we've decided to do this in the reverse order to what they started tonight. So, with that said, letting him catch his breath here for a moment, we start at this end with Robert Metz from the Freedom Party.
Thanks, Gord. One of the things I hear a lot this election is a lot of people are not voting for something, they're voting against somebody. A lot of people are voting conservative because they don't like the other two parties and vice versa. And personally, I believe that's wasting your vote, that unless you examine your party that you vote for and the party you select, and you understand the reasons why you are voting for them, you are wasting your vote. So I'm not going to say vote for any particular person, I'm just going to say please vote for something. On another note, I just would like to extend an invitation to all our viewers to perhaps discover freedom and discover Freedom Party. We're on the internet at www.freedomparty.org, or you can call our London office, which is in the phone book. We're always there to help, and we'll be there after the election as well as during it. Thanks very much.
And now from the NDP party, Marion Boyd.
Well, thank you for listening tonight, and I hope that our discussion helped you to make up your mind about how you're going to vote on June the 3rd. We must remember that our vote is one of the most important things that we possess in a democratic society. There are choices in government, and when an election comes along, it's up to us to exercise those choices. The people of London Centre have been served by me for 9 years, and I think they know that I work very hard on their behalf. I don't pretend that I can always solve the problems that are brought to our office, but I do my best, as does my staff, and I want to be able to continue that work. Both in government and in opposition, I have held responsible positions in my party and in the legislature, and you have had an opportunity to watch me work. You can trust me to represent you at Queen's Park, to be the kind of consensus-building politician that actually gets things done in a non-confrontational way. I believe that's what we require. I am very convinced that our community is one of the most marvelous places in the world to live. I want it to stay that way. I want our healthcare industry, I want our education industry, I want our community services all to function as well as they can, because they are the engine of our economy. And when they face cuts and disruptions by a government, as they have over the last 4 years, it cuts into the very heart of our community. It doesn't have to be this way. Only the NDP has presented you with a very clear plan of how we would pay for the changes that we have put out in our platform, how we would reinvest in healthcare, education, the environment, in housing, and in ensuring that all of us have a decent quality of life. I ask for your vote on June the 3rd.
And now for the Liberal Party, Roger Caranci.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us into your homes this evening. Make no mistake about it, we are running for government. The Liberal Party under Dalton McGuinty is running to lead this province into the next century, a century that will become very important to the future, very important for our children, very important for healthcare and education. The two mainstays of our society, the two mainstays that have made this province a great province. The past 9 years, we have seen the mistakes that government has made. We have seen governments run from the problems that they have made. We have not seen them face up to the responsibilities that they have created over the past years. We are running with a plan. A plan, again, I'm telling you, the 2020 plan that Dalton McGuinty has put together. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a plan that will bring us into the future and bring us and make this province more prosperous and a better place for your children and my children to live in. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And now for the Green Party, Jeff Culbert.
Thanks, Gordon. Thanks to everyone at home. Well, I start with the same points that I began with, which was basically that we have to have a sound environmental foundation in our thinking before we're going to have a sound economy. It can be sound in the short term. In the long term, the environmental sustainability has to be there, or it's just going to decline. Similarly, for human health, it's going to decline until we start getting serious about it. What's been happening in the past few years under the current regime is been cutting of the ministries that regulate what's going on in the environment. They've been drastically cut in all aspects of their operations. And not only that, but the fining, not just the regulation, but how much is actually given for fines, that's been dropping every single year so that polluters are basically doing it and getting off scot-free. So we're not even improving the situation, we're actually making it worse as it is right now. Now, if I, there was a judgment that Ontario was the third worst jurisdiction in North America. Of all the states and all the provinces, Ontario was ranked the third worst polluting jurisdiction. So when are we going to tackle this problem? We talked about financial deficit. That was a big thing earlier in this decade. We got to get to the point of talking about environmental deficit, and not just a program here or a program there, or what does it mean to be sustainable? If I thought, I've criticized the Tories' particular record, if I thought one of the other parties had a solid enough environmental foundation to what they were doing, I would be supporting them. I wouldn't be in the Greens. The Greens are needed. And if you can give us your support, these things will be solved, because they're going to have to be solved in the long term anyway. Thanks very much.
And now for the Conservative Party, Dianne Cunningham.
Well, thanks, Gord. I've enjoyed being here with my colleagues this evening, and I'm looking forward to the election on June the 3rd. You know, in 1988, when I first went to Queen's Park, I went there for two reasons. Number one, I was very worried about the huge debt that we were leaving our children. Our own parents did not leave us with the kind of interest that our kids are going to have to pay when they start earning a living for the first time. We are highly overtaxed, and it has been our own fault. I also went because I was concerned about education. I was concerned about standards. I was concerned that we didn't have apprenticeship training for our young people, a coordinated effort between our secondary schools and our colleges. We have that now. And now that I've heard my colleagues speak from the Liberal Party and the NDP Party, I'll never forget the lost decade at Queen's Park when I watched those two parties stick us deeper into debt to the tune of $60 billion. I call it the lost decade because this evening I want to remind you that we have listened to the Liberal talk about all of the things that he's going to do with an unfunded Liberal plan. We can't afford it anymore. A strong economy means more jobs, a stronger life for families, money to spend on people's education, on health care if they have to choose. And I will say also that we do have seniors that are depending on us, and they're depending on our care. And the last government, in fact, closed some 11,000 hospital beds and didn't create one new long-term care bed. We've tackled those tough decisions. It hasn't been easy. For some of you sitting in your living room, it's been very uncomfortable. Some of you may have lost your jobs. But in this last while that I've been knocking on doors, those young people that had no hope and opportunity didn't have summer jobs just 4 years ago. They have them now. Our university students are as confident as they've ever been. They are choosing courses to get those good jobs, and we'll be right there behind them.
Thank you, Dianne. Time is up.
Thank you.
Andrew Jezierski for the Family Coalition Party.
If you vote for Andrew Jezierski, you will have a real-life fighter in Parliament. In my youth, I was at the Mission Impossible. I was fighting the government in communist Poland. Most of the people said it was a waste of time. Nothing will change. You end up in prison or dead. For long 10 years, they were right. But then, slowly, more and more began to believe in themselves, began to stand up for what's right. Now, Poland is free. And here I am again, at the Mission Impossible. to break the undemocratic mold of three parties, to bring basic moral values back into politics and public life, to protect the unborn from unjust death, to make family strong again, to end the culture of death. Don't tell me it cannot be done. I have done it before, but not alone. Do not vote strategically. Do not vote for the lesser of three evils. Do not vote for a handout from a big brother. Vote with your conscience. Everybody is going to laugh now when I tell you that I can win against two well-known candidates. But if you vote for your family, we will win. Voting for Andrew Jezierski is right, because it shows that family matters to you again. It is a vote pro-family Ontarians can cast in good conscience. It is a call to other parties to change. And it builds up the FCP for the future election win.
Thank you. Thank you all. Actually, you mentioned Mission Impossible, and somebody said to me it would be Mission Impossible if we got everybody to stick to time. Some of the candidates did not use all their allotted time, so we have another couple of moments here. I want to use that time, candidates, if I can, to ask one question from all of you, and that is a 30-second response would be appreciated, and we'll start at this end if we can now. Andrew, the question I'd like to ask is, in your campaigning, talking to the people of London North Centre, what is the single most important issue that they have brought to your attention, and what will you do about it if elected? Andrew.
Well, actually, the most important issue they've told me, it is the choice to vote for somebody who can stand for the rights of the most vulnerable, that they can vote with their conscience, as I said before. And I found a lot of people who didn't vote before because they just couldn't do it consciously.
Okay, Dianne Cunningham?
Well, I think I'd have to say probably health care. And even this afternoon at the door, I met with a gentleman who thought we had made a very good beginning, that he recognizes that there is more money there. He also recognized that you need a strong economy, lower taxes, and he knows that we're on track, and he believes that we need another term to finish the work that we began. But he also complimented us in our constituency office on the fact that we've been able to help him in his challenges, and I think that all of those issues are very important to the public at the door.
Jeff Culbert for the Green Party. Let me guess, the environment, right?
No,
no?
It's not, Gord.
Okay.
It's actually the idea of in policies and also in the tone that is being set by the government that things are very nasty, and a nasty government makes for a nasty society.
And what would you do to change it?
What would I do to change it? Oh, well, first of all, you have a lot more democracy and consensus building at the local level so that things aren't imposed upon people. You hear from all the different parties. You'll find out when you have those meetings that, yes, environment is an important thing for all people.
Grassroots, in other words. Okay, thanks. And now for the Liberal Party, Roger Caranci. Roger.
There are three main issues, and the three main issues, again, being healthcare, education, and the last one being a government that actually cares for people and uses their input into developing programs and developing legislation that can affect them. This is the big thing. I'm sure Ms. Cunningham was up in an area today of London that I don't know if she knocked on a doctor's door who no longer lives there anymore. Last week he told me he was leaving for the United States. That's the type of climate that they have created in this province, and that's what we want to get away from, a climate
We want
of
them back,
confrontation.
Roger.
Well, wait.
A climate of confrontation is not the way to go. Consultation is, and that's the problem that the Conservative government have created. And now Marion Boyd for the NDP.
Well, I must say what Roger and Jeff are talking about in terms of the very visceral dislike and distrust of the way in which this government has pushed through its policies is very, very much what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of concern about what people see as a lack of consultation, as an insistence by the Premier on making policy on the fly and then forcing his government to go along with that in the face of facts. There's an old saying, don't confuse me with the facts. it could apply very well to Mike Harris, because that's the way he's behaved as Premier.
Thank you. And now Robert Metz from the Freedom Party.
Without a doubt, Gord, taxes are the #1 issue that I hear about, and not only taxes, but a combined frustration with the idea that people are paying so many taxes, and yet there's still not enough money for all the services that the government promises them. You know, as long as we keep thinking spend, 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 and I hate to say it, but the PCs in Ontario are doing the same thing again, we're not going to see a solution. And I really think that the only solution is to turn everything back as much as we can to the private marketplace, and let's get on with the business of freedom, which is what politics should be all about.
Thank you, all candidates, for coming out tonight and representing your points of view from the riding of London North Centre. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching this program. This was, again, the first of 4 special programs we're doing here on Rogers Community TV. Coming up at 9 o'clock tonight, if you're watching this live on Friday night, that means at 9 o'clock tonight we're going to have the candidates from the riding of London West here in studio, again to take your calls. On Monday evening, we're going to do it again. At 7 o'clock, we'll have the candidates from the riding of London Fanshawe, and then at 9 p.m., we'll have the candidates from the riding of Elgin, Middlesex, London, again here in studio to take your calls. The 4 programs will then be rebroadcast on Wednesday night, June 2nd, in their entirety, 4 hours straight. Bear with us for that. 4 hours straight candidates meetings. We'll just replay these 4 programs starting at 7 p.m., 7 to 11 p.m. on Wednesday. And again, don't forget to join us on Thursday evening for live election coverage in conjunction with CFPL Radio 98. Thank you again for joining us here on this program tonight. We will be back at 9 p.m. I'm Gord Harris. Have a good night.